Hey, actually this is a talk by Abdulrahman, but he needed to go because he messed up his flight schedule. And I should talk about his project more or less. So he is working for Elixir, and he is responsible for sensitive data in Oslo as part of the Elixir project. And he has a problem that he wants to run Galaxy in a very, very secure environment. So more or less encapsulated from everything else. Every job should run in a Docker container. The users shouldn't be able to run arbitrary Docker containers. But still, the flexibility should be there and so on. So this is what he cares about. And the problem, as always with Docker, is usually you have an old kernel. You have an old version of Docker, but you want to enable your users to run Docker containers, but not arbitrary ones, and you want to run it not as root, so that the attack surface is as minimal as possible. So he actually created a nice solution. So this is a link to a GitHub repository, so you can see what's going on. It's not that complicated, but essentially, the old cluster from him was running with Slurm, so he invented a solution that encapsulated for Slurm. And this is how Docker inside HPC and Slurm can work, even on old or more or less old hardware. So this problem is solved. So usually you or the sysadmin can use the Docker binary on its own and just execute the Docker engine and run Docker container. But as a user, they have developed an application called Soccer, where you abstract the binary and the handling from the user. So the user always needs to go to this path, which abstracts the surface area. So the user has actually no direct access to the Docker daemon and cannot run arbitrary containers, but needs to go to this Soccer wrapper. You can run this on Slurm simply by putting Soccer in front of your binary, and then everything else is passed through this abstraction layer. So this works even with a Docker Galaxy Docker image, which can submit jobs to Slurm, which then starts a Docker container, which runs Bowtie. So this is quite neat. Just a proof of concept that this is actually not running, the container is now not running as root, but as a cluster user. And this is how his setup looks like. So they have 2 compute clusters, and they all using a local Docker registry to get their containers and to get the processes running. So, and now comes a new generation, because Slurm is kind of old, and we encountered that htconda has actually a built-in system for Docker containers nowadays. So what we did is we extended the Galaxy Docker image to support htconda, just for the simple reason that the latest htconda version supports this Docker universe. So as soon as you now submit a job via Galaxy to an htconda cluster and annotate that job with a Docker image, it will run your jobs inside of Docker. And this is how it looks like. So this is the Galaxy Docker image. We have support for that. So you run your Galaxy in Docker, you submit your tools. The tools will be executed on a cluster. Every cluster node has a Docker engine installed. And then every node is actually pulling from the registry the images which the tools are needed. So you have your Docker container, a tool is running inside of it. You don't have access to other user data, so this should be pretty secure, and everything is managed from Docker. We were even able to test that inside of Docker. So if you just pull the latest version of the Galaxy Docker container image, you can run htconda inside Docker, which more or less means you run Docker in Docker in Docker to get that running. So actually their setup is a little bit even more secure, because this is running in a VM, and this VM is submitting to this cluster. And then they have a local registry because this entire setup is not able to connect to the internet because they need this kind of security level. Okay, I cannot answer any question besides the HD Condor stuff. But if you have questions to HD Condor and Docker, I can try to answer that. If you have questions to the Slurm stuff, there's this GitHub repo and it's good documented. Thanks a lot. Yeah, and it's all the work from Abdullah. There's one here. Okay, thanks.
No questions at all, Bjorn? Do we have any questions? I was wondering what your experience was with startup time for all the containers. Do you know much about that?
He actually measured that, and HD Condor was by far the most fastest to run these containers. So he tested it with Docker Swarm and Kubernetes, and this one was the fastest. Yep.
Thank you.
So the presentation started with the idea that you can run Slurm, that you can run Docker on old Slurm clusters. That's not, I mean, that doesn't apply to HD Condor at all, right?
So they have a current setup with a Slurm scheduler, and the Slurm scheduler also submits. I mean, they did a wrapper around Slurm more or less to submit Docker containers. But this is all obsolete because HD Condor has a built-in Docker integration, which is more nicely.
But what about that? Then I didn't understand the argument about you can't run that on old kernels or. The beginning of the presentation was saying, oh, I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, offline. Lightning talks and all, you know. Our